Before we start this week's episode, a quick note about the devastation in Turkey and Syria. By now, I'm sure everyone has heard about the historic and catastrophic earthquakes that have rocked Syria and Turkey. And if you listen to this podcast, you know that my family and I have actually been living in Istanbul, Turkey for the past several years. And while I'm grateful to say that I and my family are well and safe, it's also true that thousands of people have been killed and tens of thousands of people are displaced. Turkey is already really struggling with a deep economic crisis. And also this time of year is extremely cold for this part of the world in ways that they're not necessarily set up to handle. From day one of the Travelers Podcast, we've been sponsored by Zakat Foundation. And Zakat Foundation has a huge presence and office in Turkey on the ground. The president of the organization is actually from Turkey. And if you're looking for ways to donate and contribute, we'll say more about this later, but go right now to Zakat, zakat.org. Give as much as you can and know that you're donating to an organization that is very active and very present and very trustworthy. Along with thoughts and prayers and concern and care, any resources that you donate go a long way. Let's get to this episode of the Travelers Podcast. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. I'm Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast. Welcome back. I call this the Travelers Podcast because we're co-travelers on the journey of life and we move in communities. It's really important to be aware of that so that we can be intentional about practicing it. The society and the culture that we live in places a lot of emphasis on individuals and who's in the spotlight and who's got the mic, whose name is on the marquee, who's got the followers, who's got the likes, who's doing the numbers. And those people are really important in their own ways. We need exemplars. We need kings and queens. We need people who are pushed out there in front of us. That's one of the important roles. But no less important than those people who are always out front are the people around them who help to shape and mold and nourish and nurture them. The people that we oftentimes share the journey with, the people we share life with, the people who allow us to see ourselves reflected back through them. A lot of times, the people who have the initial idea or the people who are able to help bring those ideas to life or the people who put the finishing touches on something that actually make it accessible and enjoyable and desirable to others. Oftentimes, those aren't the people that are center stage. And so a big part of what we do here is to connect with those people and to ask those people, to listen to those people, to spend time with those people so that we can benefit from them and so that we can give them their flowers. But it's not charity for them. It's acknowledging the reality of the situation that the Creator has put something very special in each one of us. And oftentimes the people that are that special are not the ones in the middle of the spotlight. Azhar Usman is an Indian American brother. He's one of the most unique human beings that I've ever known in my life. He grew up in the Chicago area. His parents are from India. First of all, he started off by becoming an attorney. And as if that wasn't enough, then he went into the comedy clubs and started doing stand-up comedy, toured the world with the Allah Made Me Funny group that was headed by Preacher Moss. They put a concert film out by the same name, Allah Made Me Funny. And my song, Good Lord, was actually commissioned by Azhar Usman and Preacher Moss and Mo Ammer. And I actually made that song, Good Lord, for that movie. He's also toured extensively, opening for Dave Chappelle and Hannibal Buress and Hassan Minhaj and Mo Ammer. He performs regularly at some of the most prestigious comedy clubs like the Cellar in New York. As an actor, he appeared in Miss Marvel as the falafel truck dude in the Miss Marvel joints. And he's written for countless TV shows and comedy specials. sometimes credited, sometimes not credited. And he also is a really profound student of the religion of Islam and the spiritual tradition of Sufism. And I wish I had a way to really fully convey how important Azhar is to some of the greatest leaders in each of these fields. But I mean, incredible, globally renowned spiritual teachers and masters, and some of the biggest people in comedy and Hollywood and music call Azhar to get his take on things, to get his guidance on things, to get his advice on things, to get his moral and spiritual support. He's just one of these really incredible human beings that I'm very, very grateful to know and to share life with. And I'm also happy to be able to share just a brief conversation with. You know, this is just one of our many talks that we've had over the course of the last 15 years. And so he's one of those people that they say, if you know, you know. A lot of people just call him AZ. If you know AZ, then you know. And if you don't, then you're about to get just a little bit of a glimpse and a little bit of a window into a truly remarkable artist, writer, actor, comedian, spiritual student, and aspirant, and all around human being. We're brought to you, as always, by the Zakat Foundation, and this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp online therapy platform, betterhelp.com/travelers. Enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast with Azhar Usman.
Bro, I miss you so much.
I miss you.
Man.
It's so crazy. Like, I was thinking, we've talked a lot and we've seen each other around the world and all this stuff. And I haven't, like, I hugged you one time in the last 2 years. And then we had one long phone conversation, but it's really strange to have gone this long without really kicking it.
I don't know what to attribute that to other than, busyness of life, stage of life. And then you moving to Istanbul for sure created a bit of a, out of sight, out of mind. Like I just don't see you because you're on the other side of the planet.
Yeah. Well, it's weird though, because like it's such a mental thing. And I remember Evidence told me this. He was like, when you move out of the country, people are gonna feel spiritually, just like a psychic kind of feeling, like you're not part of it anymore. He knew that because I think he's had people that have like moved or something. Like I spent most of last year in America. Like I was touring, I was in America a lot. I was, so I was around, but it's just a thing that like when somebody says like I don't live here anymore. But honestly, that's the flip side of why I did it. Like even if I spent a lot of time in America, just the fact that like my address is not in that country anymore is a big part of why I did it.
Man, it's one of those things. And I'll see your stuff come up, on social media or whatever. I'll just be like, oh, I'm gonna listen to Brother Ali podcast. So I'd feel more connected because I'd be like, oh, I'm seeing what he's up to. I see you, I hear your
Man, I
voice.
had no idea. I didn't know you were listening.
Oh, of course, bro. Such a big fan of yours.
It's weird. Like I never expect my I never expect my like friends or family to listen to the podcast. Like one time Auntie Samira was like, I've been listening to your podcast. And I was like, no.
Yeah, right. I know that feeling. That's the worst. Yeah.
And I just started
I know
thinking
what you
about
mean.
all the times that like, cause Imam Zaid is not the guest every week. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right,
okay,
right, right.
okay.
Well, you know what it is, bro. I love listening to you talk. In general, I just think you're a very insightful person, and you have a lot of, you lived a very interesting life, and you've gleaned a lot of interesting insights. But honestly, like on the religion side of things, being a Muslim, being a committed Muslim, a believing, committed, practicing Muslim, right, and being a successful artist and rapper and somebody who has like I think that you have synthesized a very, very large volume of both information and knowledge.
Mhm.
And because you're a rapper and a poet, the words you use to just explain something that I might have heard it 100 times, the idea, but the way you articulate it, the way you can explain it, man, it's very, very interesting, and I always learn a lot. So
Man, that means a lot coming
that's
from you.
why I
Cause
listen.
I learned a third of it from you. You know what I mean? Or from people that you connected me with, or I mean, you know that that's
Astaghfirullah.
true. Man,
That's a weird thing to hear, but
it's
I know what you
true.
mean.
And it's very true. I'm saying the day, so I think I met you on one of the most important days of my life. Did me and you meet at Taken to the Streets 2004? Is that the first time we met?
I don't know if it was that was the first. I think that was, yes, I think so. And you gave me a copy of Shadows on the Sun. I gave you a ride after the
Yeah.
festival.
That's the first day that I remember like hanging out with you. And like, that's when I started knowing you.
I think that's the first
So
time I
even
met
if we were in, because like we're both around Iman, and like you also were like very vocally supportive of Imam Muhyiddin Muhammad, rahimahullah. So there's like probably we may have been in a room together before, but like that's when I started knowing you.
you.
So like that day is the first time I ever performed at an Islamic event. It's the first time that I ever saw Sheikh Hamza. It's the first time I ever a lot of things. But most significantly for me, it's the last time that I spoke in person with Imam Muhyiddin Muhammad in this life. I've done it in dreams, mashallah. But like, on this side of eternity, it's the last time I spoke to him, and it's the first day that I met Dr. Omar. So it's like the
Subhanallah.
I was passed from my first father to my second one, and it's also the day that
Wow.
that my wife decided to become Muslim.
Wow. All that happened on the same day?
Yeah, and I met Usama Cannon that day.
What?
I met Mustafa Davis that day. In terms of like the trajectory of what my life is now, a lot of it started on that one particular day. It's one of the days that has like literally changed my life.
Wow.
And then so much of what I pursued, particularly after the Imam died, rahimahullah, after Imam Muhyiddin Muhammad died,
Allah yarham.
you wrote an article that was like what so many of us needed, or like we're really desiring. It
Mm.
was just an ending to the gaslighting of the fact that America had denied its most influential and important figure that lived during our time, other than Muhammad Ali.
Mm.
But like in terms of like religious leader, and no disrespect or shade to Sheikh Hamza or Minister Farrakhan or any of the other like really important people. But when you wrote that article, I had already met you and liked you. But when you wrote that article, I was like, man, I've never heard the children of immigrants, immigrant. We talk about this weird dichotomy. The language sucks, but like immigrant Muslim, indigenous Muslim, like for you to say that, that drew me closer to you. And then with the Imam not being around anymore, I had like a spiritual lull. And Amir Suleiman insisted that I make Hajj. And then I came back from Hajj fully recommitted, but didn't know what to do about it because Imam Muhammad wasn't there anymore. And you provided most of the insight to me. And you weren't pushy about anything, but you were like, here's somebody you should check out. This is one thing you might be interested in. Here's a teacher that you might find interesting. Here's a great scholar from West Africa. Like you told me about Sheikh Amadou Bamba, and you told me about Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and you showed me the conquest of the what was the thing about the birds?
Conference of the Birds.
The confluence of the bird. You showed me that, and then you told me about the 9 saints that opened up the Nusantara, and
Wow.
all of these things. And I'm just like, wow. And the way that you did it was like as an artist, as a friend, as somebody who wasn't trying to sell me on anything. You know what I mean? So like really like you showed me the lay of the land in a way that was
Wow.
really necessary, and I couldn't have accepted it from somebody who didn't understand and appreciate what I knew you understood. Like you understood and appreciated where I was coming from in a very profound way, and you did it publicly.
Wow. Bro, that's ajib. I mean, that's obviously God. That's God doing it through us, right?
Yeah.
I never could have
But that doesn't lessen you.
figured
That
that
means
out
that
on
that
my
means that
own.
Allah chose you to do that,
Allahumma salli ala
and
nabi.
also chose
Allahumma
us,
salli. Well,
chose us and wrote that for us.
Allah, 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 Allah. May Allah make us sincere and may Allah accept it, you know?
I mean,
That's scary actually to hear those things, bro.
but you've done that for a lot of people.
Allahumma salli ala nabi.
You know a lot of amazing people, like big celebrities and some of the most well-renowned teachers of Islam and all of these people. And you probably know a bunch of people I don't even know you know. You are very special to them because you're just yourself. Like when you're with them, I see versions of them that the world never sees when I see them with you. Like I remember we were riding in the car with you one time, and one of them called you. I won't say who, but this like big times, like well-known, spiritually famous, religious famous person called you.
Spiritually
Spiritually famous. Is that gonna be your new? That's gonna be your new podcast. Spiritually famous.
That's
Hilarious. So I'm saying he called you, and he was on speakerphone. You told him he was on speakerphone, but I just heard a completely different version of this guy than I had ever heard before. And I'd been in private settings with him, and one of the things that I think is like one of the keys is that you're so much yourself when you're with even these high profile people that you give them, you're one of the very rare people that gives them permission to be themselves.
Wow. You told me a version of this before. Yeah, you said a version of this to me before, which actually affected my life, man, quite a bit, if I'm being totally honest. So I don't think about that. I never thought about that, you know. But I think there's some truth to that. And I think I get that from my mom, by the way. My mom is extremely like personable and friendly, and like literally you could drop her anywhere on earth and she'll make friends in 5 minutes.
It's not even friendly because sometimes you say like wild things to people. Like sometimes you.
But sometimes that's what a real friend does.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not charisma. It's not being nice. You're not flattering people. Like you give very genuine compliments, but you also will say like really stinging things sometimes. You know what I'm saying? That are like, but it's said in love. And I'm saying like, I know you've said these things to these people.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And they're still like, they're still so excited. Man, there's this story that Mo tells. I hope this isn't embarrassing. Because to me, it's like, it's a beautiful story. But like Chappelle is about to film a special.
Oh no, he told you the story? Did I tell you the story?
I probably both. And I'm saying,
I mean, this whole incident, I'll just say you can share it if you want, but you know, it did radically affect my relationship with Dave. But I would say honestly, you know, on balance, when I zoom out, it affected my relationship with Dave in the most beautiful, positive way.
Can you tell the story, please?
Without getting into details, I'll just give the high level, right? It's just the fact that like Dave was about to tape his special in Chicago.
One of the big Netflix specials.
You know, he asked me to do the run as the opener. Of course, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that. So Dave is taping the shows in Chicago. And yeah, basically the outfit that he had chosen to wear.
The coveralls.
You know, yes. You know, I personally just didn't, I just got to keep it real. Right? So he came out wearing them, and everybody in the room, I just felt like was kind of being fake with him. It's what it felt like to me. It's my subjective perception of reality, right? It's like everybody was just being fake. And my immediate impression was not that it looked cool or that it looked timeless or that it looked like he wanted it was inspired by like a pilot's outfit, you know? So it's meant to look timeless. I was like, dog, you look like a janitor. Like that.
The way that the story is told that you were like, bro, what are you doing? You look like a janitor. You can't go out there. You can't feel special. You look like a janitor. What are you doing?
No. That's that's totally fake news, bro. No, in fact, since it's been brought up now, let me tell you my side of the story. I did not say anything. I was aware that it's a thing. And, you know, he's about to... So I'm just quiet, bro. I'm just quiet. And then Dave, of course, picks up on the vibe. He's like, so what's the matter, Azhar? Tell me what you don't like about my outfit.
Okay.
Like what's the matter? You don't like it? And I was just like, no, what are you talking about, man? That's cool. I just try to deflect. And he forced the issue. And he was just like, nah, what is it? I could tell you don't like it. What is it? And I was like, bro, listen, man, you're my boy. I love you. You're coming out after all these years with this product. The last thing I want is for people to be clowning my boy saying he look like a janitor. And then immediately, of course, he's Dave Chappelle. He's going to make a joke. He's like, that's right, because I'm cleaning up. I just told him I'm sweeping up. But it did something to throw off his energy, and it was bad. And he was not happy. And then he confronted me, the next day, just like, yo. I was like, I love you, man. And he's like, do you? He looked me in my eyes, man. He's like, do you?
Wow.
Basically on some like, if you did, would you behave this way?
Wow.
Would you be this reckless? Yeah. And then I had to boss up on him and be like, dog, if you believe I'm the problem here, you got these snake motherfuckers in your
Yeah.
circle, and you're worried about me.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about me and you don't trust me, I will gladly go home right now and leave you alone amongst these snakes. So, don't get it twisted, man. I'm the one in this building who actually gives a shit about you. Yeah. That was a hyper real. I've had some hyper real conversations with him, man. Because I love him, bro. And to me, he's one of the realest on the planet. So it's like, yeah, I can't. It's funny when you talk about I keep it honest and just very, very transparent and real with these people who we respect and love so much. Because part of it is, to me, it's like either this stuff is fake, it's all fake news, religion is not real, or, I just got to find the real ones.
Right.
If I find the real ones, bro, I can't be anything other than as real as I could possibly be with them, because I would feel like I'm doing them and myself a huge disservice to be fake with them. It was Abdul Hakim Murad, TJ Winter, who once said, we can never fault a person who rejects the hadith or the sunnah of the prophet of God, like the way of the prophetic way, if they have never met a saint.
Right.
Because it just sounds theoretical.
Right.
I was this way when I was a kid, by the way. Like my parents would take me to Sunday school. I was born in an Indian Muslim family. Mm-hmm. So I was raised Muslim. My parents are, very kind of middle of the road, Orthodox, Sunni Muslims, never into anything weird or, heterodox. My mom's side of the family is kind of Sufi oriented. My grandfather was really into it. So that's my background. So I was born in Chicago. My parents are part of like the local mosque. They start taking me to Sunday school since I'm probably 2-3 years old. So by the time I'm like 6, 7, 8, I'm starting to understand what these people are trying to teach about religion. And I remember Ali, I remember the first time they ever taught us about backbiting. They're like, yo, there's this really big sin in Islam. It's called backbiting. I was like, yo, what is that? They're like, yo, to say something about somebody in their absence that they would not want said about them.
Yeah.
This is like a major sin in Islam. And I was a little kid. I was like, really? And they're, by this point, they've already taught us about heaven and hell and the day of judgment and all these things. So I'm just this little kid trying to do the math on it all. And I was like, yo, listen, man, I'm saying this to myself. I'm thinking to myself, like, listen, either these Sunday school teachers are all lying, like religion is fake, or pretty sure they're all going to hell, because I would just hear them backbite all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just being around Muslim adults who are backbiting.
Yeah. It
just led me as a kid to be like, okay, either it's all fake, or these people are fake. Mm-hmm. That was one thing that as a kid I worked out. And then the other thing was, and this is where Shaitan would whisper, man, which was based on the same idea of like witnessing this hypocrisy, widespread hypocrisy, which was the feeling of like, man, Islam, the way it's being taught to me, these lofty ideals and these interesting ideas and all this, like it sounds so dope. Wouldn't it be cool to meet a Muslim one day? That's how I used to feel as a kid. Like, I would love to meet somebody who's actually living these lofty teachings, because I don't see anybody. And it was not until I would say I became a young adult and I started meeting some people who had really spent their lives, studying the religion, battling their egos, and submitting themselves to like a real spiritual path. And at least to some degree, in my estimation anyway, my perception, they had begun to realize some of those truths. Then it was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
But had I not met those people, I would probably be an agnostic or just remain very skeptical, because it's like, yeah, it all sounds cool, but if I never met anybody who could walk the walk, it's just talk.
Yeah. I mentioned at the top of the podcast that Syria and Turkey have been devastated by this series of historically catastrophic earthquakes. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that my family and I have been living in Istanbul for the past couple of years. My inboxes and my texts and my apps that I use to communicate with people and my DMs and my email, everything has just been full of messages of people reaching out, making sure we're okay, asking if we need anything. And alhamdulillah, I mean, physically and directly, the earthquakes didn't touch Istanbul. Some people said they felt tremors and things. We personally didn't feel them. But just living in this country, I mean, first of all, there's already a big economic crisis that this country has been undergoing for the past several years. On top of that, the weather is extremely cold for this region of the world, and they're just not set up for it. So really low temperatures that, honestly, coming from Minnesota, like temperature-wise, like, man, why does this feel so harsh? Like I said, this part of the world just isn't set up for it. So a lot of rain, the buildings aren't set up for this type of cold. They're just not insulated like that. So even nice places have water coming in and they're really drafty. People have lost power. There's electrical storms. There's incredible winds. This country has been already dealing with a lot, not to mention what Syria is going through. And so the earthquakes, it rivals September 11th. And the feeling of being in a country that has gone through something like this in some ways reminds me of September 11th. It's a historical level event. And I remember when the earthquakes happened in Haiti and there were hurricanes and things like that, and being in America and just being like, man, I see the footage and I want to help. And what do we do? And I just remember feeling like, man, I really hope that we can trust these organizations. I know our intentions are good, but in this particular case, it means a lot to us that we've been connected with Zakat Foundation from the beginning of this podcast, because Zakat Foundation works on the ground. They don't just drop money places. They don't just drop ship food. They have a really serious headquarters in Turkey, and the president of the organization is from Turkey. So if you go to zakat.org, zakat.org, this is an organization that's deeply connected. This is an organization that you can trust. This is an organization that's really adept at getting goods and services and resources exactly where they're needed and to the people who need them the most quickly. If you feel moved to help, a little bit goes a long way. You know, the $20 that we can give, the $100, the $200, the $5, it goes a long way, especially if a lot of people do it. So I'm personally asking, out of all the talking I've been doing for the last coming up on a year about Zakat Foundation, I'm personally asking, go to zakat.org right now and give something to the people in Turkey and Syria that are going through this. And while you're there, stick around with Zakat Foundation, because it's a reputable organization that does great work all over the world. When did you start writing for other comedians? Like, how did that start? Or like writing with them, or like, how do you describe what you do? Because it's not like you're just handing them index cards with jokes on them. Like, you're not slappy, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like selling jokes to.
Yeah. It was a very organic process. I don't know if the same thing happens for rappers, but like if you go to an open mic as a rapper and you hear another rapper, working on a new track or whatever, and you think of something for them, like, oh, you could rhyme that word with that or whatever. Do you all do that? Like give each other notes like that or not really?
It's real touchy. It's real. Like you
Exactly.
gotta be like,
Because everybody's real sensitive about it.
yeah, you gotta be really close. It's like, me and Slug do that. I would not say that to most people.
There's a similar dynamic in stand-up where it's like, if you're at an open mic, you hear a comedian do a joke, and then you think of, what we call tags. A tag. So every joke has 2 parts, a setup and a punchline, right?
Mhm.
The setup is the informational part of the joke. The punchline is the funny part. The essence of comedy is surprise. So the essence of the punchline is that it surprises you. So the setup of a joke, causes the audience or the listener to think in one direction, and then the punchline surprises them by coming out of left field. After the punchline, you can have additional lines. Sometimes you can have a second punchline, which is meant to be as funny as the first punchline, and is almost like the first punchline acted as both a punchline for the setup, but also a setup for the second punchline.
Yeah.
It's a rare joke construction. More common is like setup, punchline, tag, tag, tag. So it's like the informational part. Yeah, this guy walking down the street and he's blah blah blah, and then he says to the blah blah blah. That's the punchline.
Right.
And then you add those extra lines, right?
Yeah.
Now you thinking blah 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 ha ha ha. Yeah, that's like blah 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 ha ha. That's blah 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 ha ha ha. So those tags, and then if you escalate the tags, the third one is called the topper.
Okay.
That's like a old school vaudeville term, a topper. And then a closing joke should ideally have setup, punchline, tag. The last tag is a callback as well.
Right.
Callback meaning you are giving
now give me the big piece of chicken. I'm home.
Earlier.
I grabbed the door. I love you. Now give me the big piece of chicken.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So I would go to open mics as a young comic, and I would hear my fellow young comedians working on their material, and I would think of tags. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you could say this. Oh, you could say that. Or, bro, you're saying this thing. And I'm just hanging out with my fellow comedians. I just didn't know. I mean, it's also very sensitive, by the way, among comedians. I just didn't know.
Right.
So I'm just being friendly, and I'm just free giving away tags, and they're funny. So people are like, yo, thank you, Mm-hmm. So in this way, I become very friendly with a bunch of comedians in Chicago. And I'm not developing a reputation just yet for like, yo, this guy's got funny tags.
Right.
But it started to become a thing. Like if I gave a tag, it's like rather than feel defensive about it or feel sensitive about it, the vast majority of the comics were like, I want to hear it because I know this guy's funny.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, Hannibal Buress, who's, a dear friend and hilarious comedian.
Man, I love that guy so much, man. Yeah.
Oh, Hannibal's one of the sweetest people. Not just in comedy, just a sweet human being.
He really truly is. Especially if you are also an artist that is like, he's a lot like, man, artists know how to be. Chuck D, when the first time I met Chuck D, he said, man, we need each other, Ali. He always calls me out. We need each other, Ali. He's like, you need me, I need you. Artists need artists. Only artists can help artists, man. And Hannibal's like that. Wow. Like if you
Hannibal's like that.
Yeah, man. Really, really good.
Yeah. And in fact, the story illustrates that because, so he is doing, at the time he's working on Comedy Commissado. He's one of his Netflix specials. And he was running the material, I think, in Chicago. And then either I texted him or he texted me, come through, and then I opened for him. I warmed up the crowd. And then I just stayed and watched his set. And like, as I always do, I just started jotting down a bunch of tags just on my phone. And at the end, we hang out backstage. I say, yo, I thought of some tags for you. Oh, let me hear them. I give him a bunch of tags. Like, oh my God, that's so funny. Can you send them to me? Sure, no problem. So then I just decided to be a little more professional. And I took them out of my phone and I put them into like a little Google Doc or whatever. And I emailed that to him. And then I think what happened was that was like a short list of maybe like 5 or 6 tags. And then subsequently he filmed a version of the show and sent me a link and said, hey man, if you think of any more tags, then let me know. So then I sent him a proper like time coded set of tags.
Yeah.
And this time I go a little harder. It's like, maybe 15 to 20 tags with time code, like at Joe blah, blah, you say this, try this line. This, maybe you could try this line. And now I'm getting a little more technical. Like, this setup, you said, well, you use 14 words. Here's a way to do it in 10. Like Jerry Seinfeld said, I can't tell you how many times I spent an hour trying to get an 8-word sentence down to 5.
Yeah.
Because the economy of words is part of comedy.
Absolutely.
So I give him a bunch of tags. I'm doing this as a homie because I love Hannibal. Wallahi, God is my witness. I expected nothing in return.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching the special when it comes out months later. And I'm just watching it as, a fan, as well as like, it's my boy's special. And lo and behold, in the credits, he's giving me a credit as creative consultant.
Yeah. He's very generous too.
And that's just him. And I have no TV credits. I have no, I'm not in the Hollywood game. At the time I had no agent, no manager, nothing. I'd never been, I might have done a little bit of stuff here and there. I think I like MTV Daisy. I was like a VJ and, I had to dip my toe in Hollywood stuff, but I never wrote for anybody formally other than this kind of homie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so he gives me this credit on a Netflix special. And unbeknownst to me at the time, on IMDb, which is like the Internet Movie Database, is like the industry's kind of like, definitive discography credits database. When you get credited as a creative consultant on a project, it gets listed among the producers.
Right. Yeah.
So it appears like a producer credit.
Yeah.
So he basically low-key gave me a producer credit on his special without even telling me he was doing that.
Dope.
Man.
Dope.
And then, and I think I must have told some friends about it. And then a couple years later, Hassan Minhaj did the same thing with Homecoming King.
Yeah.
I gave him a bunch of tags as a homie. And then I'm watching the credits and it says creative consultant. I'm like, oh
did you help Hassan with his White House correspondence joint too?
Yeah, yes, big time. I mean, it was him and Prashant. Prashant is his like right hand man. And he had figured out kind of hired a few different writers, but they were really trying to crack what is the, comedy's all about takes.
Yeah. Yes.
What's your take?
Yeah.
And so they hadn't really cracked it. And I was like, guys, if Trump comes or doesn't come, right, what you have to understand is at the time it was not clear whether Trump was going to come or not come, but it was 99% that he was not going to come. Trump was refusing the invitation to come to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What I explained to Prashant and Hassan was like, guys, you have to understand that if he doesn't come,
mm-hmm.
that's like the best thing for your speech.
Yeah.
because the essence of a free society is the ability to speak freely. Right. What I'm a huge advocate of free speech and First Amendment culture. Like I just think that the fact that, by the way, right now we're living through all this like free speech is at the center of the Twitter debate, the Elon Musk thing. He calls himself a free speech absolutist, etc. In law school, I studied the First Amendment.
Okay.
And the First Amendment, like the jurisprudence around the First Amendment, and basically the pros and cons of free speech. And the fact that, we talk about free speech as though it's this absolutist value in Western civilization, which is not true. There are plenty of limits on free speech.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot engage in product disparagement. That's a limitation on free speech.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot engage in fighting words. That is a limit on free speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's a limit on free speech. So there actually are limitations on free speech.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being, I do believe very strongly that this idea of like banning books that happens nowadays and burning books and all that stuff, it's like, dog, if you don't like something somebody is saying, don't try to ban them. You don't like a book, don't try to ban the book, write another book. You don't like something somebody said in a podcast, make your own podcast. The solution, the cliche they use in free speech culture is the solution to bad speech is not less speech, it's more speech.
Mm.
And so as an advocate of this notion that like, if you don't like what someone is saying, then rather than shouting them down or trying to censor them, offer an alternative, better perspective. What I told Hassan and Prashant was, guys, Trump not coming and refusing to come to the White House Correspondents' Dinner,
Yeah.
which the essence of that event is,
Right.
look how free our society is.
Right.
Even the
That's right.
elected president comes and agrees to be roasted by a comedian.
Yes.
This is a huge slap
in front of the
in front of the
whose
press
job
at a
is
press
supposed to
event.
be to hold them accountable, to
Hold
press them,
truth
to
to power.
question
Hold,
them.
yes.
It's a
Hold
demonstration
power
of
accountable.
of what's supposed to be free in the society. Yeah.
Exactly. So him not coming is like the ultimate act of anti-democracy.
Yeah. One of
You know,
one
he's
of
the
them. symbolic
one of
acts.
them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the height of being undemocratic as the president to refuse to attend the specific event which exists to demonstrate how free the society is.
Yeah.
So this key insight became the main take of the whole speech. Actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's part of the reason it went viral, and it's part of the reason that. So yeah, that was a huge friend. And I told him, by the way, I pitched the line calling him the liar in chief.
Dope.
You know, and I thought that was dope that made it in the speech, and it became one of the key lines that was quoted all around the world. That was another thing, Ali, that I realized about the power of like being a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like no, nobody needs to know who I am. But look, I pitched this thing that hit the bullseye in the culture and went globally viral and is impacting the discourse and the framing around this important event, and nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that was a nice, cool foray into like, wow, look at the power of this thing. And then back to earlier comments I was making earlier about like more than wanting to try to be rich, more than wanting to try to be famous. Why I got into the game was to impact culture, to impact the narrative.
Yeah, through speech.
That's
right. Yeah.
I care about that way more than I care about trying to make bags.
Yeah.
So basically, that was a really eye-opening experience working on the White House Correspondents' Dinner with Hassan. Yeah. And then, I gave them some notes about their show at the time. They were also trying to get Patriot Act off the ground. Mm-hmm. And, and the thing is, I also just, I discovered this thing called the gift economy. You and I have talked about this before. The gift economy, there's a great book called Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein. You should have him on your pod, man. Charles Eisenstein is a G, bro. Such a G, man. And he wrote a book called Sacred Economics in which he talks about this phenomenon or this idea called the gift economy. The gift economy is this idea that, like, imagine a world without money. Mm-hmm. What would still exist in a world without money would be people's real needs.
Right.
For goods and services, right? You'd still need food, you'd still need shelter, you'd still need all the things you need.
Yeah.
And what would naturally emerge would be some sort of barter economy.
Right. Yeah.
People trading goods and services. Mm-hmm. Okay. In a barter economy, two principles emerge that drive, all transactions in a barter or a gift economy. The first principle is the principle of fair exchange. You're a barber, I'm a landscaper. It's like, yeah, I'll mow your lawn, you cut my hair. If you have a huge lawn, it takes me 4 hours, then it's like, all right, give me 2 haircuts for one. It's like some principle of fairness emerges. So the principle of fair exchange. And the second thing that emerges is a beautiful principle called give what you can, take what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Give what you can, take what you need. And that this is a way to take money. They say the money is the root of all evil. It's like, I don't know if it's the root, but it's a big problem. And if you take money out of the equation, these two principles emerge very clearly.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, give what you can, right? It's no skin off your back. If it's easy for you, give it, and then take what you need. And in a society where people are operating with that principle and they're trying to be fair about it, have a principle of fair exchange. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful way to operate. I personally believe that's a beautiful way to operate. Mm-hmm. You're not hoarding wealth. You're not being selfish. Right. You're preparing for that accountability before God. Because if you're just constantly exploiting, these CEOs who think they're so smart, being able to make 200 times, 300 times their employees. Mm-hmm. It's like you're gonna have to answer for that, bro.
Right.
Before God.
Right.
So good luck, you know.
Yeah.
But I look at it more like, so in the spirit of the gift economy, like I still live in a world of money, but I try to embody the spirit of the gift economy, which is give what you can, take what you need. For me to give tags, to write comedy, to write jokes, I understand that they have commercial value.
Yes.
I understand that people can take my ideas and go and sell them in show business and turn them. I'm not an idiot. I used to be an attorney, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
This is the thing that actually irks me when people think that somehow I'm naive, I'm stupid, I'm just a adult who just gets taken advantage of. It's like, nah, dog, I believe in God and the afterlife.
Right.
That's the part you can't get through your thick skull. I'm not an idiot. It's just that I do sincerely believe that God will hold me accountable. And I would much rather get screwed over by somebody than ever be the one screwing someone
That's
over.
right. That's right.
1,000 times out of 1,000.
Yes. But I think it's more than that. I think that you are a type of spiritual companion, both to the scholars and also to the artists that you're around. And I think that you've helped develop these people in ways that can't really even be quantified, qualified, or described. You bring a lot to those people that's informative, instructive, and that you have helped them expand who they are. Because I know some of them, and I've talked to some of them about you, and I won't say all their names. I probably might not say any of their names, but they're some of the most well-known, respected, revered people in art and religion.
Man, it's a trippy thing, bro. Look, I pray that those things you say are true. The funny thing is, there's so many hilarious comedians that I consider very, very close fellow spiritual travelers and companions. And they all have like these impressions of me, which I get a little taste of once in a while, but they always like clowning me in my absence, which I welcome. So I was just like lamenting to a group of comedian friends recently about how I'm so bummed that I'm gonna miss my own funeral. Because like it's gonna be hilarious. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just gonna be like all these funny impressions. Like, God, I wish I could be. I'll be watching, from the spirit world, inshallah. But it's gonna be. I'm sure it's gonna be very funny. I don't. Whenever they do an impression of me in front, like to my face, it's like. I mean, it makes me laugh, So it's like, oh, it must be pretty. I must be pretty funny.
Yeah, man.
I think the most frustrating thing, Ali, though, for me as a comedian is I still don't know why people laugh at me.
Mm.
In fact, they
Yes.
laugh the most.
Yes.
They laugh. Yeah, they laugh.
When
People
you're not
laugh
trying
the
to be
most when I'm
funny.
not trying to. When I'm funny, yeah.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating.
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
frustrating as a
Yes.
comedian
Yes.
because it's like,
Yes.
bro, if I could just figure that out, then I would be
Exactly.
very successful.
Exactly.
Because
That's exactly right.
then I could tap it at will. But
Yes,
it's like,
man.
no, when I'm trying to be funny, I'm still funny. But like when
But
I'm
there's
not, when I'm trying to
nothing like
not be funny is when I'm
Yes.
hilarious.
Yes.
And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Yes. Yes. And
There's no rapper equivalent of that, by the way.
there's no what?
There's no rapper equivalent of that.
Well, there is.
Like, how would you describe that?
I mean, I think the arts are a spiritual practice, even stuff that feels outwardly negative, like the words are negative, whatever. I think there's something redeeming in that process when it's pure, or when it's done for genuine reasons. But the thing is that then what's most demonic about it is like the industry that's created around it that allows for, I mean, even for competition and for self-adulation, all this kind of like that's the industry around it is the thing. And like that industry is just built so much on, I mean, never mind the racial dynamic of it, but on people who come along and are brilliant in ways that they can't even fully comprehend. So they can't fully encapsulate it, present it, and capitalize on it. And so you have somebody else that sees them and they're like, oh, I could sell that. If I could learn how to do that, I could sell that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like.
And then you're saying these imitators then basically try to knock off the essence and then create a fraudulent version? Or you talk about the business people, the managers, the agents,
Both.
both.
Yeah. And not even necessarily that those people aren't genuine or authentic, but it's like a person who's witnessed greatness as a consumer they get a heads up, because a person who's being great and who's creating, they can't see themselves, and they don't. Because if they
Right.
did, they would stop
Right.
being creative and they would start being performative. They would stop being the genius that they are. It's very rare that somebody can be so like selfless that they can be great and know their greatness at the same time and just attribute it to God. That's very rare, but there are people that can do that. But I'm saying, like, so
Hmm.
oftentimes you get people who are just being great and they're not looking at themselves and they're not thinking about how to market it or even how to package it or how to capitalize of it. So somebody else sees it and they've got enough of that in them that they can muster a version of it, but they're usually the ones that end up figuring out how to package it.
Interesting. Yeah, I will say this, Ali. One thing I want to go on the record publicly on your podcast and acknowledge that you were right and I was wrong. For many years, basically pushing you to like make a hit record, like a club banger and like a top 40 hit. Like I couldn't understand why somebody of your skill and of your talent level, meaning natural ability and skill, having put in the time to master the craft, like please just make a banger that will be playing in like every nightclub in the world and make you this talked about phenom on the planet. And you would always push back on some like, that's not my lane, man. That's not why I was put on earth. It's like, that's not the kind of music I'm trying to make. That's not what I'm here to do. Maybe your views have evolved. Maybe your feelings and your passions or your strategy, again, putting the business side of things, maybe it's evolved. But the point is, I think I was wrong because I didn't appreciate at the time I was pushing you so much and like just frustrated with you actually as your brother, as your friend, like frustrated with like why won't he do it? I always attributed it to like either he doesn't know how dope he is or he's scared. And I think that the truth is it's a lot more complicated than that.
Mhm.
And I would say in the last few years, I've been working more in like traditional Hollywood, quote unquote,
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
TV
yeah.
writer. And like, I got to do some acting and all this stuff. And it's just like, man, I call it the Jollywood.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it, man. I don't like how many demonic forces I have encountered. So I just want to speak honestly and truthfully. And the honest, truthful reflection I've had is like, yeah, man, the industry side of it all. And you and I have, this is a 20-year conversation we've been
Yeah,
having
yeah.
about art. Chappelle put it really poetically, right? When art meets commerce is when it becomes entertainment.
Mm.
So it's like, are you an artist or are you an entertainer?
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to pass judgment. It's fine, be an entertainer, but like know that that's what you are. And don't front like you're some kind of deep, profound artist if all you're really trying to do is make a bag because you figured out some way to present a sophisticated shucking and jiving. That's so much of entertainment nowadays.
Mhm.
And then you and I have talked also about like the difference between culture and art
Yeah. Well,
and
well,
real culture and entertainment.
between culture and entertainment.
Entertainment, yeah.
Yeah. So art is a product of culture, but culture is not entertainment. Yeah.
Culture is, yeah, this took me a long time. You explained this to me, for many years till I finally started to appreciate it. And I would say now I appreciate it way more, like, and so there's so little of pop culture,
Mhm.
the culture that becomes pop, so literal. I mean, most of it is just vapid entertainment.
Right. Yeah.
The vast majority,
Yeah.
actually. In fact, it's an incredible magic trick and a very rare thing
Yes.
for to find real culture
Yeah.
present in pop culture and pop culture
Yeah.
entertainment.
It's a miracle when it happens.
Yeah, and that's what I've realized firsthand. So it's like, oh wow, that's what Ali was going on about all these years.
One of the things about culture, and Resma Menakem, who's a racialized trauma specialist, that was on this podcast, and he wrote these dope books and stuff. One of the things that he said that like this is one of the things that I was trying to say, but I didn't. He just described it so perfectly. Is that like culture always elevates? Like culture is something that all human groups have, and they have it because it's a way of preserving the unit. It always is calling to what's good. It's always healthy. It's always about preservation. So if something is ever destructive inherently, of things like, all the maqasid of the Sharia, like all the things that like the Islamic law is there to protect, somebody's spiritual purpose and their family structure and their honor and their well-being, and like, if it's destructive of those things, that's not culture. That's something else. And he says
Mm.
usually it's a
Mm.
group trauma response. It's like this group has experienced a trauma that has never been contextualized. And so it's never been really processed as a group. So you have like individuals have traumas and they have to figure out a way to survive them. And so after a while, that starts to look like that person's personality. But it's like, that's not who you are. And if
Mm.
it happens in families, it happens in groups. And I think Kendrick may have heard Resma talking on the Breakfast Club. I can't prove it. But Kendrick is like, that's not the culture. It's the first single from his new album. He's rapping over Marvin Gaye.
Interesting.
And he's saying, that's not culture.
Uh-huh.
Stop saying that's us killing each other is not culture. That's not our culture.
Culture, right.
Like, that's something else. And I believe he may have heard Resma talking. But
Mm.
in any case,
Mm.
so like culture, so like entertainment is like a bastardized counterfeit culture. It looks like culture,
Yes.
it acts like culture, but it's actually the fake thing. But what's interesting though, for you to say, like, I want to say on the podcast that I just told Mo, because yeah, you and Mo were always like, dude, why don't you be all of what you are? I told Mo when he was on the exact opposite of what you're saying right now. I said to him, like, I want to say to you right now that you were right. And I'm saying it, and I think it's more than just so like
That's so funny.
so I've been around people that can, so a club banger is not something that I'm capable of doing. And that's not a diss, that's not a self-limiting belief. But having been around Kweli and having witnessed people like so when I spent that time in Yellow Springs with Dave Chappelle and Mo and Kweli and all those guys, I I talked to Kweli a lot about just the fact that like Kweli is somebody who comes from conscious cultural hip hop music, but he pushed way further than any of us did. He demanded that he has a place at the table, and he put himself around people and he put himself in situations in ways that I never did. And he was saying that he learned a lot of that from Common. He saw Common say, "I want a radio hit." Like, not necessarily a club banger, but he's like, I want a song that breaks through all this stuff that we're doing and goes further. And that's when he eventually made The Light. You know what I'm saying? There is a light that shines. Like, he made that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then Common said, I want to be a movie star. Like, I want to be a Hollywood known person. And he said, I watched Common push towards that. And I just realized that there are a lot of things that I could have done and that I could be doing that I don't do. And a lot of it is just a lack of belief and a lack of, I've held myself back. Like I have. So it's not that I was right and you were wrong, and it's not that I was wrong and Mo was right. You know that I had the beauty to witness somebody who learned watching me and my friends and put a spin on it and was able to make a pop version of what we do. And I'm not,
Yes.
and it worked. And I'm not envious of that, even though I love that person and like it's not, I don't have anything against that person. But I watched them do that, and I'm not envious of that. I'm glad that I didn't do that. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that I would say that's what's happened for me
Mhm.
over the last few years. And maybe it's also just a maturity
But then I
thing,
watched someone like Toby
life
and Wigway,
experience.
or I watched like LP.
Mm.
Like LP is an example of like, so LP, he's somebody that's been in my circle. We're from the same cohort. And he did the exact same music with the same intention, with the same approach. He did the same thing for 20 years. but he just kept pushing and pushing and trying and trying and trying. And eventually he hit Run the Jewels.
Mm.
So that's an example of like, well, what happens if you genuinely keep persisting and you genuinely insist on, pushing what you do, staying true to what you do, and also just continuing to push, So it's not only people that intentionally make a pop version of something. There
Yes.
can be genuine success stories with people. I mean, Toby and Wigway is
Is that? Yeah, he
my
is that.
God,
Yeah.
man. That he's a miracle.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
He
Man.
is a
He's
miracle.
incredible.
Like that's an example. Like, man,
Mashallah. Facts.
he makes me
Facts.
cry the
Facts.
same way
Yeah.
Dave does, the same way Yassine Bey does.
Mm,
It's just like,
mm,
man,
mm.
that's what I believe. I believe in that. And they're
Yes.
just
Yes.
doing it. And they're not trying to, they're not trying
Yes.
to impress
Yes. Yes.
anybody. They're just are being what Allah made them. And it's proof that it can be done.
That's it. That's it. And I think our dear brother Amir is on that path. That's what I feel. And look, it's not like you and I are retired. Like, who knows what the future holds?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I'll say this about myself, okay? Because this is something I've wrestled with throughout my life,
Yeah, you must.
Like the Bible says that the three corrupting influences of the human heart are money, power, fame.
Yeah.
Okay. I have chased money before. I did a .com startup when I was in law school.
I forget that.
I wanted to be rich, man. Like I thought that was my thing. Like, yo, I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna make all this money. I bought Azhar.com in 1995.
Yeah.
Like I was just ahead of the curve on like, yo, the internet is gonna change the world. Trust me, I believe it. People thought I was crazy. I graduated law school in 99. I turned down a 6-figure job offer to practice law to pay myself $35,000 and work for my .com startup.
Yeah.
Because it was like, yo, we're gonna make it. We turned down a $12 million buyout or $18 million buyout offer, which would have made me a multimillionaire when we were doing the Noe Foundation. That's around the time Azhar Usman, my co-founder of the startup, and his brother Osama Usman, the three of us had started Noe Foundation together. And the reason Anas and I felt so pressed, like, yo, we got to get a sheikh, we got to get a teacher, is because we were like, yo, we're going to be mad rich. Like, we were so delusional, right? And we are like, yo, we're building $1 billion company. Like, this is going to be the future and yada, yada, yada. And Allah just took all that away. Like, it was a swing and a miss because the .com bubble burst. Like, we literally turned down that buyout offer. And within 2 months, like the .com bubble bursts and everything goes more or less to zero.
Mind. Yeah.
Exactly. But a lot of lessons learned. Invaluable life lessons. We had 2 billionaires invested in the early rounds of the company. So it's like I got to meet them, interfacing with like literally billionaires, 2 billionaires. Mm-hmm. And just being around filthy rich people, basically. Seeing what wealth is, how it affects people, realizing also that like, oh, right, just because you have $1 billion, you cannot buy a decent night of sleep.
That's right.
Okay. You can't, you could buy all the books in the world, but you can't buy knowledge.
That's right. Yeah.
So just like realizing like, oh my God, I was so foolish. And also had God given me wealth at that age, 23, 24, 25, I would have for sure destroyed my life. For sure. I believe that. So God actually saved me from that. And gave me so much perspective on like, do I really want all this money? Like I thought I did because, I was just raised in a culture that glorifies wealth and the pursuit of wealth and everybody wants to be rich. It's like, are you sure you want to be rich? It's a big test.
Yeah, it really is.
Again, what is that Bible verse where, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. And what I figured out at some point was like, oh, right, the measure of a rich man or woman or rich person is not the dollars in their bank account.
Right.
It's what they're doing with the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the measure of a man.
I love Imam Khalis Rashad. He comes from Imam Muhammad's community and studies traditionally. When he talks
Where does he live?
In Houston. That's where I go in Houston. Is Ibrahim Islamic Center,
Mashallah.
and beautiful, beautiful brother. So he talks about zuhud, and he's an accountant. And zuhud is like being spiritually detached, so that, like Dr. Omar says, the whole world can be in your hand, but not in your heart. And so, Khalees, when he's talking
Facts.
about this with people, especially with people who come from historically impoverished, he said it's not that we're fetishizing poverty. There's just something about that phrase that I really love.
Wow. I
But just
like
like
that.
we're
That's
not
true.
fetishizing poverty, but we just stop fetishizing wealth.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of like again, there's so many things to say about this time we're in, but one of the defining features of our time, this kind of modern age, is inversion of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, you talked about counterfeit culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, we're living in an age of counterfeits.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's age of counterfeit religion, the age of counterfeit money, the age of counterfeit love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like what makes porn? It's like outward with no inward.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's
so the whole
complete
world is really
objectification.
pornified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so in a sense, in every sphere of human endeavor, everything's becoming pornified. It's just
Yeah.
all outward form, no inward reality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the first things Dr. Omar told me, is that lust isn't bad because of the sexuality.
Yeah.
Like our religion is, you know what I mean? Our religion is very positive about
Very sex
sexuality.
positive. Yeah. Sex
Yeah.
positive religion.
I've said that on, sex positive religion.
Yeah.
He said it's wrong because it's false love. Like lust is false
Subhanallah.
love. That's the horror
Wow.
of it. How dare you pretend? How dare you go through the motions of creating life with someone that you don't love?
La ilaha illallah.
Subhanallah.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Subhanallah. Man, that's incredible. So all of this was a rant to say
Yeah.
that money thing was my first big swing,
Yeah.
my 20s.
Yeah.
And then I would get out of all that, it's like, all right, I'm done with the .com thing. I'm not really trying to chase money. I figured out that it's not really what my life is going to be about. Because I met enough rich people to know that most of them are miserable.
Yeah.
Then I started practicing law. I did that for a couple years while I was doing comedy, kind of moonlighting as a comic. This is like, the year 2000 was a very interesting year in my life because I didn't know it at the time, but I stepped on two divergent paths. And I didn't realize it. One was to, take the hand of a Sufi sheikh, which is all about erasing your ego and battling your ego and trying to become, hidden, like buried in the earth, buried in obscurity. And I also started doing stand-up comedy, the purpose of which, or one aspect of which is, certainly if you want to do it professionally, you got to become known. People have to know who you are. If you want to make money as a comedian, fame and becoming a known human being becomes a necessary door that you have to go through. And I just never really kind of figured that out until it was almost too late. And so, long story short, man, I would say I started, I started the tour, Allah Made Me Funny, with Preacher Moss. And then we bring on Mo and we get to tour all around the world. And it's like, things were going great. And low key, probably on some level, certainly never consciously, but unconsciously, subconsciously, it's like, yeah, I want to be famous. So it's like I had my at bat trying to become rich. Then I had my at bat trying to become famous. And then again, same phenomenon. It's like the more I was around famous people, the more I got to see the real lives of really famous people and like what's involved in that. It's like, dog, this is not what I want. This looks insane. This is a crazy life test. And again, the measure of a famous person to me is not how many followers they have. It's what are they doing with that fame? What are they doing with the platform? And the same could be said for power. I never wanted power. I'm not trying to be in politics or, have power. But again, I've met politicians. I've met heads of state. And it's like, same problem, right? The measure of a powerful person is not the size of their army. It's what are you doing with that power?
Right.
So we have to all stand before God. And that's when I started realizing like, oh, right, more money, more problems. There's a basic truth in that because I'm only interested in what God has written for me. And I'm interested in being content with what God has written for me. That's what I'm after.
Yeah. I mean, like the Buddhists say, like the wanting is the problem. Like your desire for something other than what is your problem. Like the perception that you have problems is your problem.
Facts.
Yeah, man.
Facts. Yeah. So that was a profound like thing to come to grips
Yeah.
with. Is like, all right, here I was thinking I wanted to be rich. Then here I was thinking I wanted to be
Yeah.
famous. And it's like, nah, man, that stuff is so foolish, actually. These are foolish pursuits.
The Travelers Podcast is sponsored this week by BetterHelp online therapy platform. And when you use our link to sign up with them, which is betterhelp.com/travelers, you're going to get a discount on your first month of therapy. We're going to get a commission to help the work that we do here on the podcast. It really is a win-win for everybody. I'm a musician and I cannot stand to watch movies about music being made because it's just like, man, that's not how it works. And I want people to know how it works. My wife is a therapist and she can't stand to watch therapy in TV and movies because she's like, that's not how it happens. On TV and in movies, you see a person lay down on a couch, they cry to a stranger, and that person tells them all the secrets of their life and unlocks everything for them and tells them what to do and maybe gives them pills and things like that. There are a lot of approaches to therapy and there are a lot of ways that it's done. I don't think any of them are that. What therapy does look like in most cases is we start talking to people about the issues that are bringing us to therapy in the moment. So, addictions or relationship issues, or anxiety or depression, or thoughts that we're wrestling with. And firstly, they ask us questions that we couldn't have asked ourselves. And those questions are very revealing. Then they listen and repeat our answers back to us in ways that offer us a lot to learn a lot about ourselves. Now, mind you, they haven't told us anything yet. But as time goes on, they start drawing connections. And they just give us the opportunity to look at ourselves and our lives and the things that we're dealing with and the way that we've processed things, the way that we've stored information in ways that we haven't explored. Like, what's the idea that I have of myself based on this thing that happened? And maybe I didn't even realize that I translated it that way. And then what conclusions have I drawn about the world that may have served me in the moment, but may not be working as I go forward? So, therapy takes a lot of different forms. There are a lot of different approaches, but most great therapists are going to unlock different ways for us to see ourselves that are going to allow us to come to our own conclusions and to set our own goals. And I personally believe that we deserve access to therapy. I had a hard time accessing therapy. I heard about BetterHelp on a podcast and I gave it a shot. I've had two different therapists now, and I'm actively involved in weekly therapy sessions on BetterHelp. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers, betterhelp.com/travelers. Like I said, you get that discount. You start talking to them about what type of therapist you'd like to see, and then you make your own schedule with that therapist. You can start communicating with them right away. And at any time, if you feel like maybe this isn't the person for me, you change therapists, no questions asked, no extra charge. I'm recommending it. I have this partnership with them. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers and get down with this therapy journey. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to jump back in one moment, but I just want to take a second and say that I'm very grateful that you're here because the podcast and the music that we release, the limited vinyl drops and the merchandise and the learning series, the events, the concerts, all the stuff that we do is completely independent. There's no record label, there's no distributor, there's no big corporation behind it. But I'm very grateful that we're able to make a living doing exactly what we want to do. It comes from our heart and it's intended to go to your heart and nowhere else. And that's a really beautiful thing to be able to say, especially in this particular time. And I think you know that already. And I think you know this already. But my guess is that you also follow and listen to and support other artists and creatives and content people and speakers and thought leaders that are independent. And when that's the case, it's cool to follow us on social media, but it's actually not that cool to just follow us on social media. It's getting more and more corny. Increasingly, that things are changing in ways that I don't have time to get into right now. But it means that even if you follow us and even if you tell the robots and the AI and the algorithm and whatever, even if you tell them you want to see the stuff we put out, a lot of the things that we post are just not going to reach your eyes and you're not even going to know about what we're doing. The best way to connect with us is to go to brotherali.com. You'll immediately be prompted to sign our mailing list. And I don't like to sign mailing lists. I don't like giving people my email. But in this case, when you do it, I write those emails personally and I only send them out when I've got things that I really want to share with you that I think you're interested in. I don't do it a lot. I will not blow up your email. So sign that mailing list and then go to the shopping section. We got all of our merch there, podcast merch. There's Uncle Sam Goddamn anniversary stuff. There's Brother Minister stuff. When we do our limited cassettes and vinyl and all that all of that is there. You'll be able to see all of that. And if you go to the section called Join, we've got a caravan, which is our group of subscribers and supporters. And there's different ways to interact there. You get exclusive stuff. The top tier of those subscribers, we interact with them a lot. There's a Slack channel that's open at all times, and we communicate and build community. That middle tier, that's $25 a month, you get exclusive stuff. You get parts of these episodes that aren't released to everybody. You get music and things that I want to share on a regular basis. And then even that lower level, that $5 level, everybody that subscribe, you get these episodes early and without commercials and ads. And you know that you're supporting the work that we're doing here. So if you're digging any of the stuff that we do, head to brotherali.com, connect with us directly, and know that we love you beyond words. We appreciate you beyond words. Have you ever spent any time, like, I know you've met him, like, because we've been around him together, but Rhymefest actually, a lot of the Kanye West lines that people know and love, Rhymefest actually wrote those lines. Like, Rhymefest
Mm-hmm.
is a Muslim who wrote
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Walks.
Amazing. I love
Like,
it.
you know what I mean?
I love it. I love
And
it. I mean, I only met him,
it,
I think, twice. One of them was at one of those Iman retreats. So we did hang out a
yeah,
bit there. In fact, he really liked what I shared right there. I think it was a share that night. I did something. And then he came up to me afterwards, like on some like hot. He was in a hal, bro. He was in a hal, I think, just being in that environment. Like he was in a heightened spiritual state. And he was like, "Can I get your number?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, of course, right?" So I give him my number. And then he called me and we talked maybe like a week later. And then we texted a bunch for like a couple days. And then he calls me again. He's like, we should start a band. And I
wow.
was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Bro, name the place, name the time I'm there." Part of my problem, Ali, is that because I don't play the thing, like I'm just like, yes, I'm
Yeah,
there. But then maybe that could come across as too, whatever,
agreeable.
extra or
You're right,
needy
right.
or agreeable. Yeah, you got to play that thing. You got to play a little coy. Everybody wants what they can't have. This is one of the rules of the
Hmm.
nefs. Everybody wants what they can't
Hmm.
have. So for him to be like, "Yo, let's start a band," and for me to be like, "Yeah, sure, name the place," I just come across as like a schmuck. So that's my read. That's my read on it. Because after that, he just ghosted me.
Oh, no,
After that, he just
he's
completely ghosted me.
really an artist, and so he's one of those people that, like, when he's in the moment, he's sincere to that moment and the people that he's
Yeah,
with,
he
and
means
like,
it.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I get it. I'm the same way. I've tried to get better over time. Again, over time, over my life. We started out, we returned to where we
yeah,
began. Becoming aware of my own phoniness and fakeness. Because that is a part of fakeness actually as well. To be irresponsible about one's word and to give one's word, but then not follow through. Right? They say integrity is defined as what you say is what
right,
you do is
yeah,
what you say. So you close
yeah.
that
To be
gap, right?
integrated, that what you do is integrated with what you say.
That's right. And so to just be a guy who's agreeable, again, because you're a nice guy, but that also makes you a man who's just making empty
Mm,
promises. It's a big part of my relationship with my kids is so strained, I think, largely, not largely, but in a very significant
hmm.
way. Cause it's like, yeah, Mr. Empty Promises.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's come up in these conversations a lot. Is just like, so many of us as artists, we're in the moment, and so many times, like, those moments take us we move around, and it's a blessing to be able to travel and things like that. But like when we have children, man, that's the most difficult part. You know, it's a trip is like I made a song about my son when he was 6 years old, when I was just starting to travel, and I said, you know, I tour and things, and when I come back, we seem to pick right back up where we left off. If I ever come home and feel it hurt us as friends, I swear to God, I'll never tour again.
Mm. Subhanallah. You swore to
I swear to
God,
God,
bro.
and it did. It did,
Oof.
and I didn't.
Oof. Oof.
I swear to God,
Oof.
it
Oh
did.
God.
I didn't.
Mm.
And I
La
lied to
ilaha illallah.
myself.
May
I
God
lied to
forgive us.
myself and told myself that I had no
Astaghfirullah.
choice. But then the pandemic came and I
Mm.
had to figure it out. And he was already gone.
Mm.
Not gone for he was gone from my home. He's not gone from my life. Alhamdulillah.
Mm. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Shout out Fahim. I love your son. I love your family, man. I love you. And may God rectify all these affairs and patch all of our hearts, and heal us, and allow us to forgive one another.
And forgive ourselves.
That's a big part of it. Forgive
Like when you
ourselves,
think
man.
about rahmatal lil alameen, you know,
Mm.
like the mercy to every level and every aspect of creation, to be merciful and to be like embodied mercy is like, man, you know, it's interesting. Like now I have these two daughters and like I'm home for them. And it's crazy because they have no idea that I'm a dude that used to stand on stage in front of 30,000 people and tell them what to say. And they all said it no matter what I told them to say. They have no
It's
clue.
wild. It's wild.
Also, I don't know how to cook in this country. So they also don't know that I used to be able to cook. But
Hilarious.
they like they're the ones that have had me there every single day. Like not every single day. I'm saying I still tour, but I'm saying they wake up and go to bed with the reality is that I'm there. And that's very different from my two older kids. And, you know, and so we're talking and I'm like, you know, so sometimes I'll joke with them and I'll be like, I want you to be my baby and I don't share you with anybody. And they're like, no, you love me and mommy loves me and so loves me and so loves me. And the other day, one of them started saying, and I love me. And I was just like, wow, like that's,
Mm.
man, these kids are, first of all, they're just
Mm.
so
Mm.
certain that everybody loves them and they love themselves. And like
Mm. Mm.
maybe in another time, in a different place,
Wow.
people didn't need to say something like that. You know what I mean? It feels like in some way it
Mm.
sounds counterintuitive to the spiritual path or whatever. But like, no, they know that they're in their own loving embrace. Like their loving embrace like includes everything and everyone, and everyone
Mm.
they know loves them. And so I was just like, you love yourself?
Wow.
And my 5-year-old was like, Daddy, do you love yourself?
Wow. Wow. See, but they're so pure. Children are saints, right? So they're so pure that when they say when a child says I love me, right? That I in that sentence is not the ego.
Right. Yeah, it's not like I'm
That's
infatuated
the
with
I love
myself and
me.
like I'm
Yeah, no, that's like the real me, my spirit, my infinite spirit soul loves the real
yeah,
me, my infinite spirit soul, which is all purity and love and
yeah,
light. The problem is as we get older, right? The ego, the false self, the ego self, the selfish self, the animal self, the bestial self, that me, the gross part
yeah,
of me. That's the part that is so. Again, it's one of my enemies. It's one of the enemies of the real
yeah.
me.
And it's just a liar. It's just like that's the thing about it. Like it's the fact that it's a liar. And it's the fact that it's counterfeit. And that's why I say it's like there's a difference between, you know, I was talking to my therapist and I was saying, like, yeah, you know, my dad moved around a lot and he left us and blah, 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 blah. And then we were talking about my son and she was like, well, you kind of repeated that with your son, didn't you? And I was just like,
Wow.
ah. And she
Ouch.
was like, you know, she was just like, do the people, she's like, the question for all of us is like, do the people in our lives, regardless of what the outer circumstances are they certain that we love them? There's no other question. Like, are they certain that we love them and that they're important to us? Not like, do we, and that we approve of them, or like, do we value, like, are they certain of that? And like, I couldn't say yes. I couldn't like,
But it's a bit of a bro. Can I share
yeah.
something with you? You're talking about writing. This is something I wrote. This is like such a personal thing that I wrote many years ago to my dad. Actually, you
Mm,
know what I'm saying? And I'll try not to get emotional, but there's a lot here
man,
that I haven't heard
I
this
cry in every
in a
episode.
few
I'm so
years.
surprised neither one of us have cried yet. That's very strange.
Mashallah. Okay. All right. Well, so just to set it up, this is an email I sent my dad, December 8th, 2009.
Mm,
And I just remembered it right now because of what you were talking about. Your therapist said to you about, and the idea that your kid, do the people in your life know, are they certain that you
yeah.
love them, that they're loved by you? So it reminded me of this. So I'll just read the whole thing. It's not that long. I call my dad Abu. Abu. Walaikum salam. So it's part of an email
Yeah.
thread. So I'm replying to his greeting, right? Abu. Walaikum salam. I am now in the UK, not too far from London. I am attending a conference with Preacher Moss as well at a place called Wilton Park. You can check out the conference information, blah, blah, blah. Give a link. It is very interesting and educational for me. Both Preach and I will be performing for the conference attendees tonight, inshallah, so I'm looking forward to that. I understand how empty and lonely the house must feel after Uppy, my sister, left. She had been visiting. She and I were texting the other day, and she too was telling me how lonely she feels now in Minnesota and how much she misses all of us. Life is a bit strange in that way, it seems. Of course, as a father now, I can relate to the heartbreak you and Ummi, my mom, must feel when you have to go long periods of time without deep, meaningful reconnection with your own children. I miss my kids a lot when I am away from them, but at least in my case, my kids are still so young. So, inshallah, I still have a lot of good years ahead of me to spend with
Mm,
them. But when they grow older and they launch their own lives in the pursuit of their own
mm,
dreams, goals, and
mm,
aspirations, then I'm sure it becomes difficult to let go. As you know, I will turn 34 in just a couple of weeks, which means that basically the last half of my life I have been living on my own. Naturally, all of this got me thinking about how difficult it must have been for your parents, my grandparents, to have all of their sons move away, far away to America.
mm,
The immigrant struggle is one that fascinates me, especially after I have traveled so much around the world. The idea of just moving to a foreign land with no real family or friends there, with little familiarity with the local culture and customs, and not even a firm grasp on the local language/dialect, it's an amazing thing. And then to succeed in one's host country and to become indigenized there, to lay down foundations and roots and to raise one's children there, it amazes me. The heartache and sadness that your parents must have felt all the time must have been quite intense. But hopefully, the intensity of their pride in your accomplishments was proportional. I am sure when Dada, my grandfather, would come and stay in your house for weeks and months at a time, visiting from India, he must have taken great pride in having a son who succeeded against so many odds. Last paragraph. Anyway, I guess I am in a reflective state of mind right now. I woke up very early this morning due to my body being jet lagged and on a different schedule. I decided to shower and get ready and head over to the conference facility, and I have an hour before breakfast begins. So I thought I would check my email, and I decided to write these things to you. I think about these things more and more these days, about the fact that just as I have sons, I am your son, and you were the son of your father. The relationship between a father and a son is such a special and unique one. It seems no matter how hard we try as fathers, sometimes our boys will never be able to really know how much we love them and how proud we are of them. And perhaps sometimes as fathers, we are never able to truly understand and appreciate how much our sons love us. I remain at your service always, your loving son. Perhaps they never know, my brother. And perhaps we never know. That's the tricky thing about, you know, a reciprocal love relationship is that's why it always annoys me when I tell you I love you and you say I love you more. It's like you don't know
Mm.
that. Beware the makers of claims.
You know, there was somebody that was a period where I was saying that, and there was somebody that I was really influenced by who used to say that.
Mm.
I said that because that person said that.
No, no wonder it annoyed me so much.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. It's amazing, man. Like, thank you for sharing that. And one of the things I also was talking with the therapist about is like, man, you know, my father died of suicide, and his father died of
Mm.
suicide.
Mm.
So it's like that father son thing is like, and I remember, I mean, you know, you just think to yourself, like, did he feel like I didn't need him? Did I feel like I didn't need him? Did I feel loved by him? I know that after he died, his wife told me all these stories about how like reckless and wild he was. That I was like, man, if I would have known that stuff about him, like that could have been my friend. Like if I would have known how messy he was,
Mm-hmm.
like there's all these stories about like, man,
Mm-hmm.
this dude, you know, and I kind of got really sanitized versions of these stories. But like this
Mm-hmm.
dude had like a just a crazy life. Like he presented himself as this like buttoned down middle class you know Midwestern white man.
Yeah.
But underneath the surface, like he actually, and that person to me was very boring. And I was like, I
Mm.
don't see what, you know, but behind the scenes, there was all this stuff that like, man, now that would have been interesting. So I went and visited, you know, and he lived in Allentown. Like that's my experience with Allentown, PA, which is now like there's a Muslim community
Mm.
there, like that live together and there's like real teachers and
Mm.
stuff. But like I went to Allentown when my dad moved there with his new wife and these like young kids. And so I went back there when he died, and I was driving around with his stepkids, and they were telling me like, oh, the guy who changes oil in there knows your music. And like, oh, there's a guy that works in there that he's a big fan of yours. Oh, and the lady that makes pizza in there, she knows your music. I'm like, how do you guys know this? And she said, your dad would like go anywhere where there were young people. He would go in and be like, hey, do you guys like hip hop? Yeah. Do you guys know who Brother Ali is? And they'd be like, yeah. And he's like, that's my son. And she found that he had a whole
Amazing.
computer in
Amazing.
his office dedicated to just tracking
Wow.
me. Like all my interviews, all my YouTube clips,
Wow.
anything that was ever written about me, there was like a computer, and I had no clue
Wow.
about that.
Wow.
So like when the therapist, like what she was asking me is like, of course you love your son, and of course in my mind, that touring that I did was for us, because like I'm not coming home and buying Rolexes with this money. Like this is because like before I did this, you know what I'm saying? Like I worked at UPS and I lived an insanely impoverished life. Not as a kid, I'm saying as a young adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like me and my first wife, we lived like I
Mm-hmm.
was just telling Brendan before we logged on. I don't even remember what we ate. Like we went years where I don't remember really eating meals. We slept on a mattress
Mm.
on the floor, and like there's nothing else I know how to do that's going to get me out of that other than what I ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that my son grew up in a home where the
Mm-hmm.
lights were never off and he never had to worry and what all this other stuff. So in my mind, I'm doing all this for us. But like I just really love the way that she asked that question. She was like, has he always,
Mm-hmm.
every moment of his life, been certain of your love for him? And like, that's what I don't know. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then I can think like I appreciate what you shared, because it's like you go backwards, and in both cases it's like, Allah is El Wadud and the Prophet is the Habib.
It's a two-sided coin, man. And by the way, Ali, listen, I'm gonna say something to you as your brother because I love you, and I know this subject is something that we've returned
Yeah.
to throughout the years, but this thing of like this idea that like yeah, I was being insincere because I made this promise that if I ever come off the road and it's affecting us, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna stop touring. And then this idea that like, no, but I convinced myself I was doing it for us or whatever. Right? One of the unstated aspects of that whole
Mm-hmm.
framing is this notion of like it can only be one or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the reality is it could be both,
Yes.
right? It could be like you're doing it to support yourself and your son and your
Yes.
family. And you love touring and love being on stage and the center of attention and having adoring fans. Like both of those things can also be true at the same
Yes.
time. There's this false dichotomy of like, no, it can only be one or the other. Because if it's not, I think that's this purist, like being almost
Yeah.
puritanical about it, and that's not real
Yeah. I
life.
know. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I'm well aware of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then also there can be a part about being the center of attention, that's what Allah wrote for me, because that's always
right.
been my reality from the time like even when I stopped rapping, like, you know what I'm saying? Like
You are an imam.
La ilaha illallah. I mean, said to me, like we were doing Jamali project. She's like, whatever you're doing, whatever you're interested in, there's always going to be a room full of people that just want to sit and listen to you talk about it. She's because like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, also,
No, you are an
and
imam, bro.
yeah, man.
Yeah, you are an imam, bro. You are an imam. You are an imam.
It's so like I never know how to close these things, especially with my like for real brothers and sisters and people I really, really love. And like this is all just an you don't, because they don't end. Because I'm saying, like, first of all, every time I see you,
Of
like we
course.
literally have talked for 24 hours straight before, slept a couple hours, got up and started again. Like we've done this many
Yes.
times, and
Yes.
we've
Yes.
disrupted a lot
Alhamdulillah.
of other people by doing so. Like
Oh
we've
yes.
talked
Yes.
all the
Yes.
way
Yes.
through
Yes.
ceremonies and other people's lives and like big like like it's
It
no
happens.
problem. It
It
is no
happens.
problem. So I mean, this is all just like this is all a never-ending conversation. But I think I know how to close this one. Yasin Bey, right? The new Black Star album.
Mm,
There's a verse that, like, for
mm,
everything that I love of his, like, I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's definitely in the running. He says, "It's a dedication to my favorite band, the Human Beings." It's like the name of the band.
mm.
The faithful, the
Amazing.
graceful, the classic, and the tragic. The evidence of things
Mm.
unseen, the book of light, the mansions in the moon, the bones of Pharaoh,
Yes.
recently discovered and anything but new. The doubter's doubts about it never made it untrue. Life, the
Mm,
gift, the peace and the pressure. Can't remember how you came or win a bet about how you'll exit.
mm.
From the start, the only thing certain is the end. It's promised to all and none know not when. If you pray, don't worry. If you worry, don't pray. That's a quote from
Worry,
my
don't
mama. It's a
pray.
poem I heard her say. From the tall castle wall to the mean teeth streets, may you get what you want and only want what you need. I mean, he says
Amazing.
so much, and then the hook, so much beauty we forget to be reminded that you could be anywhere and find it. So much beauty we forget, then get reminded that you could be anywhere and
Mm.
everywhere and find it. My God,
Where and
man.
find it. Shahid. And then Shahid, right? That's Shahid.
Man,
Witness. Wow. Wow. He said so much in that.
what a beautiful man. Just in every way, man. what a just beautiful man.
Mashallah.
And what a character.
Mashallah.
What a
Mashallah.
character.
Mashallah.
What a
Mashallah.
unique.
Bro, I'm so grateful. You remember you and I talked about this. I've been wanting to be, friendly with him and just connect with him for years. And we finally did, bro.
MashaAllah.
We finally have become connected in a good, beautiful, meaningful way. The guy is just pure light in the form of a human being. He's just pure light.
And what I learned is like so many people want a piece of him that I don't pursue him. I don't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to be on
You
his,
told me that, by the way, about
yeah.
him. No, you told me that about him, and I took that note to
Yeah.
heart. And so it was just a very unique way. I won't get into any details of it at all, but basically it was like, we were all there that night Chappelle was tackled
Yeah.
in LA.
Yeah.
And it was a very intense few days. And so I just, again, Chappelle calls me Muslim Forrest Gump. I just find myself in, unusual situations or circumstances with important people in the middle of important events. And so I just was, at a show a couple days after the tackle, me, Dave, Yassine, and a few others. And like, we just had such a hyper real convo. And I told him, I shared Dajjaliwood, the framing of Dajjaliwood, and he started tweaking, man. He was like, "Oh my god, man!" Like I was like, "Yo, you can use that on anything. You can have that." Again, gift economy. Like, yo, if you're gonna use that, please, like, make a track called Dajjaliwood. Yes, but then we traded numbers, and we've been staying in touch. And the man is pure light as far as I'm concerned, man. I love him, and I love you, and I love this community of artists, man.
Yeah.
That we have been so blessed to be part of. And spirit, what did you say? Spiritual companions.
Yeah.
Spiritual. Yeah, we are spiritual companions and fellow travelers. I love your framing, our traveler podcast.
Man, me and you sat and like you actually helped me try to figure out the name of the podcast. You remember
Yeah, right.
we had a whole list of like
Travelers is cool, man. What was the one that you were hot for a minute on House of Mirrors?
Yeah, House of Mirrors. And then you gave me one that was in a Chuck D track.
Unblind.
Yes.
Radical
yeah,
submission.
No, unblind. Yeah, we're brothers of the same mind. Unblind.
Unblind.
Caught in the middle in.
Blind,
Not surrendering. I don't rhyme for the sake of riddling. False media. We don't need it, do we? Yeah, man.
Unblind, yeah. Unblind is also a cool
Unblind,
title.
yeah.
Especially for you. No, man, you are a gift, Ali. Knowing you is a gift from God. And you are a gift to this world and to the ummah. And when I say you are an imam, I'm quoting the great Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, rahimahullah. God have mercy on his eternal soul. And that's why, because he testified that you are an imam. And because my teachers, Dr. Omar included, regard you to be a teacher, you are, and you are I count you among my teachers for sure, in life, in art, on the path, So I'm just grateful to know you, man, and thank you for honoring me by inviting me on the Travelers Podcast.
I love you, man. Assalamu alaikum.
I love you too, man. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Special thanks and much love to my dear beloved brother Azhar Usman for being so gracious and generous with his time and with his thoughts and experience and wisdom and just with his presence here on the podcast. We're really, really grateful and appreciate it. Follow Azhar on social media, and if you get a chance to see him in person in a comedy club like The Cellar in New York or somewhere in Chicago, or traveling and opening for Dave Chappelle or Mo Amer, do not miss it. It's an experience that words don't really do justice. You're probably going to see Azhar with some kind of crazy premise that's going to make you think, yo, has this man lost it? Like, what is he talking about? But stick with it, because when he brings it back around and when it all connects and when it all lands, it's really something to behold. We're brought to you, as always, by the Zakat Foundation. Much love to them. Do not forget to head to zakat.org and put something in to help the victims of the earthquakes in Syria and in Turkey. We're also brought to you by betterhelp.com/travelers, online therapy platform. Head over there, get down with this therapy journey. When you use that link specifically, betterhelp.com/travelers, you'll get a discount and we get a commission. And so we're grateful to them. Special thanks to Amna Mirza, Mansour Panawala, and to Last Word, and to Ant, and to Darian Washington, and all of the people that listen and give me feedback on the show. We're really, really grateful to you. Shout out to all of the people in the caravan. Head to brotherali.com, sign the mailing list, join the caravan, get down with this thing. Travelers Podcast is a production of Travelers Media and is produced by the one and only Brendan Kelly, aka BK1. Much love. See you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.